The images you're about to see are the last humanity will ever obtain of Pluto. Not for a few years, not for a few decades, perhaps never. No space agency has plans to return. No rocket is being designed for that journey. What New Horizons captured in July 2015 is all we'll have for generations, possibly forever. And that makes every pixel precious. For 85 years since its discovery in 1930, Pluto was little more than a point of light. Even the Hubble Space Telescope, the most powerful eye we had in orbit, could only show a blurry smudge just a few pixels wide. We knew it existed. We knew roughly its size, and practically nothing else. Then New Horizons arrived, and in a matter of hours, that blurry dot became a world. The impossible journey. New Horizons launched on January 19, 2006. It was in such a hurry to reach Pluto that it became the fastest object ever launched by humanity, reaching 58,000 kilometers per hour as it left Earth. It passed the Moon's orbit in just 9 hours, a journey that took Apollo astronauts 3 days. And still, it took 9.5 years to arrive. That's the scale of the outer solar system. Pluto orbits at an average distance of 6 billion kilometers from the Sun. So far that sunlight takes more than 5 hours to get there. So far that the Sun, from Pluto's surface, appears as little more than a bright star in a perpetually dark sky. On July the 14th, 2015, New Horizons passed 12,500 kilometers from Pluto's surface. It was traveling so fast it couldn't slow down. Carrying enough fuel to decelerate would have required an impossibly large spacecraft. So the engineers made a decision, all or nothing. A flyby at maximum speed, capturing all possible data in a few frantic hours, and then continuing onward into the void. It was a one-shot encounter, and it worked perfectly. A world that shouldn't be alive. The first thing that surprised scientists was how young Pluto's surface appeared. A world so small, so cold, so far from any energy source, should be covered in craters accumulated over billions of years. It should be geologically dead, frozen in time since shortly after its formation. But Pluto hadn't read the manual. Vast regions of its surface are almost completely crater-free. That means something has renewed them recently in geological terms, perhaps in the last few million years, perhaps even right now. Pluto is alive, and no one expected that. The most iconic feature is impossible to ignore. A giant heart of pale color dominating an entire hemisphere. Scientists named it Sputnik Planitia, and it turned out to be one of the most extraordinary geological formations in the solar system. Sputnik Planitia is a basin more than 1,000 kilometers in diameter, probably formed by an ancient impact, but what it contains is truly astonishing. A glacier of frozen nitrogen several kilometers deep. And that glacier moves. Solid nitrogen at Pluto's temperatures around minus 230 degrees Celsius is surprisingly soft and malleable. Residual heat from Pluto's interior combined with pressure from the glacier's own weight creates convection cells. Warmer nitrogen rises from the bottom, cools at the surface, and sinks back down at the edges. Like boiling water in a pot, but unimaginably slower. Each cycle takes approximately 500,000 years. Pluto's heart beats, slowly, but it beats. Mountains of ice and volcanoes of water. At the edges of Sputnik Planitia, rise mountains that rival the terrestrial Alps. Norgay Montes, named after Tenzing Norgay, the Sherpa who, alongside Edmund Hillary, was first to reach the summit of Everest, rise up to 3.5 kilometers above the surrounding plains. They are the highest known mountains on Pluto, but they're not made of rock. They're made of water ice. At Pluto's temperatures, water ice is as hard as granite. It doesn't deform, it doesn't flow, it simply exists as solid rock. Pluto's mountains are literally mountains of frozen stone, as resistant as any terrestrial mountain range. And then there are the volcanoes. Wright Mons and Picard Mons are massive structures, more than 150 kilometers in diameter and several kilometers high, with depressions at their summits resembling volcanic calderas. But if they are volcanoes, they don't erupt lava. They erupt ice, cryovolcanism, the process by which mixtures of water, ammonia, and other compounds are expelled from the interior, flowing down the slopes before freezing solid. Pluto has ice volcanoes on a world that should be completely dead. An atmosphere that breathes. Perhaps New Horizons' greatest surprise came when the probe looked back after the flyby. With the sun behind Pluto, the light backlit its atmosphere, revealing something unexpected: layers. More than 20 distinct haze layers extend up to 200 kilometers above the surface. They're composed mainly of tholin particles, complex organic compounds that form when the sun's ultraviolet radiation interacts with methane and nitrogen in the atmosphere. Tholins are responsible for the reddish and orange tones that color parts of Pluto. But Pluto's atmosphere isn't stable. Pluto has an extremely eccentric orbit, approaching 30 astronomical units from the Sun at its closest, and retreating to 49 at its farthest. That variation, combined with an axial tilt of 120 degrees, produces extreme seasons. When Pluto approaches the Sun, its atmosphere expands. Frozen nitrogen sublimates, passing directly from solid to gas, thickening the tenuous envelope of air. When it moves away, temperatures drop and the atmosphere partially collapses, freezing back onto the surface as frost. Pluto breathes. It inhales when approaching the Sun, exhales when moving away. New Horizons arrived at a specific moment in that cycle, capturing an instant in the life of a constantly changing world. If Pluto has active geology, a seasonal atmosphere, and complex organic chemistry 6 billion kilometers from the Sun, what other dead worlds in the solar system might be hiding similar secrets? Charon, the eternal companion. Pluto isn't alone. Its largest moon, Charon, is so massive relative to Pluto that the center of mass of the system isn't inside Pluto, but in the space between them. Technically, it's not a moon orbiting a planet. They're two worlds orbiting a common point, a binary system. And they're locked in an eternal dance. Both are tidally locked, meaning they always show each other the same face. From Pluto's surface, Charon never moves in the sky. It simply hangs there, suspended forever above the horizon, almost 8 times larger than our moon seen from Earth. Charon has its own mystery, an enormous reddish stain on its north pole that scientists named Mordor Macula. For years, it was an enigma. Why only the pole? Why that color? The answer turned out to be poetic. The stain is Pluto's fingerprint. Gas from Pluto's atmosphere, mainly nitrogen and methane, constantly escapes into space. Some of that gas reaches Charon and becomes trapped at its north pole, where temperatures are cold enough for it to freeze. Once there, Ultraviolet radiation gradually transforms it into tholins, the same organic compounds that color Pluto. Charon bears the mark of its companion. Pluto exhales, and Charon captures its breath and transforms it into color. They're chemically connected through the void, united not only by gravity, but by a constant exchange of matter. The Archive of Time, Arrokoth. 4 years after the Pluto encounter on January 1st, 2019, New Horizons reached its second target, a small Kuiper Belt object called Arrokoth, more than 6.6 billion kilometers from the Sun. If Pluto was a surprise, Arrokoth was a revelation. Arrokoth is shaped like a snowman. 2 distinct lobes, one large and one small, joined by a narrow neck. It's what scientists call a contact binary, 2 bodies that once orbited each other and eventually merged. But what's extraordinary is how they merged. There was no violent collision, no catastrophic impact. The 2 lobes came together gently at speeds of perhaps a few meters per second, like 2 snowflakes meeting in the air. Arrokoth's surface is almost completely free of large craters. Nothing has struck it significantly in billions of years. Arrokoth is a time capsule, a fossil of the solar system's birth, 4.5 billion years ago. When the planets were still forming, the disk of gas and dust surrounding the young sun was full of objects like Arrokoth. Most were absorbed by forming planets, destroyed by collisions, or altered by solar heat. But Arrokoth, trapped in the eternal cold of the Kuiper Belt, remained intact. Its composition is primitive: ices, simple organic compounds, materials that haven't changed since the solar system was young. And there's something more. Arrokoth displayed thermal and reflectivity properties that didn't quite match the models. Its surface retains heat in ways we still don't fully understand. Another mystery in a place that should be simple. Arrokoth has remained intact for 4.5 billion years in the cold of the Kuiper Belt. If you could send a probe to land on its surface and directly analyze its composition, what do you think we would find? The long goodbye. New Horizons is now traveling into the void. Each day it moves farther from Pluto, farther from Arrokoth, farther from the Sun. Its transmissions take more than 7 hours to reach Earth. Its plutonium-238 generator slowly degrades, providing less energy each year. The probe will likely remain operational until around 2030, perhaps a bit longer. During that time, it will study the interstellar medium from a perspective no other instrument can offer. If mission controllers find another Kuiper Belt object in its trajectory, they'll attempt a third flyby. But the odds are low. Space out there is very empty. Eventually, the generator will run out. Transmissions will cease. New Horizons will fall silent forever. But it won't stop. The probe will continue traveling eternally toward the stars. Without destination, without purpose, simply existing as a mute witness to what humanity was capable of achieving. In millions of years, when the sun has changed and Earth is unrecognizable, New Horizons will still be out there, carrying with it images of worlds it once visited. The beginning, not the end. The Kuiper Belt isn't the end of the solar system. It's a frontier, and frontiers aren't walls. They're invitations. Beyond Pluto, beyond Arrokoth, space continues. The heliopause, where the solar wind yields to the interstellar medium, lies even farther out. And beyond that, the stars. New Horizons didn't conquer Pluto. It didn't land, didn't collect samples, didn't plant a flag. It simply looked, observed, recorded, and then moved on. There's something profoundly human about that. We can't stay. We can't go back. We can only look briefly and let go. Space exploration, in its purest form, is an act of humility, recognizing that the universe is vast, that our time is limited, and that it's still worth trying to see as much as possible before it runs out. The edges of the solar system aren't frozen ruins. They're archives, libraries of ice and rock that preserve the oldest memory of our origin. And although we'll probably never return to Pluto, although Arrokoth will remain untouched for another 4.5 billion years, New Horizons left us an invaluable gift. It showed us that even in the most remote, coldest, darkest places in the solar system, the universe remains complex, active, and profoundly beautiful. And that, perhaps, is enough. Which image from New Horizons impacted you the most? Do you think we'll ever return to Pluto, or will these truly be the last images? Leave your thoughts in the comments.